Hello, my name is Susanne Schütz and I'm a researcher of phonetics at the Lund University Humanities Lab, and I'm also a researcher and teacher of phonetics at the Division of Logopedics, Phoniatrics and Audiology here at Lund University. And I was invited here to talk to you about my phonetic studies of cat-human communication. I'm going to start off by giving you a brief introduction to what phonetic studies are all about, what methods do we use, what kind of materials do we use, and so on. And then I'm going to move on to talk a bit about cat sounds and play you a few examples of different cat vocalizations as well. Next, I'm going to talk a bit about my earlier studies of cat sounds. And finally, I'm going to tell you a bit about our current research project and the studies that we are doing right now and also planning for the future. Now, when you're a researcher of phonetics, you study human speech, the various aspects of human speech. And you can, for instance, look at how we articulate different speech, sounds, words, and stuff like that. And in our humanities lab, we have a fabulous machine called an articulograph, which can actually record speech movements. So you can see inside your mouth what you do with your tongue when you speak. So we glue sensors to our tongue and to the lips, and then we record the speech movements inside this electromagnetic articulograph. And we can then analyze the movements and also play them back. And this is a way of playing them back. We have a contour of the palate of one speaker here. This is the upper lip, lower lip. We have the tongue here, and this is the jaw. And we can actually see what happens with his tongue and lips when he speaks.
Det var inte hit utan hit jag sa.
Again.
Det var inte hit utan hit jag sa.
Right, and phoneticians also do a lot of research on specific speech sounds. We find the components of a word, for instance. This is me saying the word stenar, meaning stones in Swedish. And we can transcribe it using the phonetic alphabet. We can also look at the different components, which consonants and vowels a word are made of. And we can also look at various acoustic parameters, acoustic characteristics. We can look at the amplitude of the waveform to see how loud or quiet a sound is. We can also look at the energy distribution at different frequencies. So we have an N here with much energy at low frequencies, for instance. We can look at the blue contour here, which is the melody, the intonation, the fundamental frequency of this word, stenar. And we can also ask listeners to listen to different sounds or words or phrases and ask them to judge them in various ways. What vowel is this? Which consonant is this? What is this type of melody in this word, and so on? So our research questions often deal with similarities or differences in speech, sounds, in the melody, in the pitch, and various other aspects of speech. For my PhD thesis, for instance, I had perception tests where I wanted people to judge the age of various speakers who had said the same words. And one object is to categorize or try to fit what you find into a system, depending on the language, the dialect, in my case, age, the speaking style, child-directed speech or adult-directed speech, for instance. And you can also use speech synthesis. You can have a computer generate parts of or all of the speech signal, and then you can have listeners judge this again. What dialect is this? How natural does it sound? And so on. So this is some of the things that researchers of phonetics do. If you want to apply these methods to cat sounds, it's quite possible. I wouldn't recommend putting a cat into our articulograph, though. I've never tried. I wouldn't place one of my cats in there. It would be possible, of course, but you can do so much without the articulograph. You can just look using video on how a cat opens and closes its mouth when it says meow, for instance. This is a cat who wants to get past the door, and he says meow like this. And look at his mouth. You can see how he opens it and closes it again during the meow. Right? As a phonetician, you can listen to this meow various times. I'll play it back again for you. And you can use the phonetic alphabet to transcribe it. And you can look at the acoustic characteristics, at the blue line, the fundamental frequency, the melody, the intonation, and also the distribution of different frequencies and so on. And you can do perception tests. You can ask human listeners, where do you think this meow was produced? At a door, in the garden, and so on. And you can also have research questions that are similar. You can use similarities or differences in sounds, different cat sounds, in the melody, intonation, and so on. And you can try to fit this into a system depending on the behavioral situation and perhaps on the breed of the cat, the sex, the age, and so on. And you could, of course, even do cat sound synthesis. I haven't tried it yet, but I would love to do it in the future. Now, cat vocalizations. There are quite a few descriptions of cat communication and cat vocalizations, but there are quite few phonetic studies. However, the earliest one, Mildred Milk in 1944, as far as I know, she was the first one who reported phonetic characteristics of cat sounds. She divided cat sounds into 3 categories. The first one contained all the sounds that the cat produces with a closed mouth, like the purr and the trill. And I'll play you back a few examples. The first one here is a purr. And if you look at the cat's mouth, you can see that it's closed all the time. The next one is a trill. It's a friendly greeting signal often. It can sound a bit like this. So it's a brr kind of sound, also closed mouth. The next category is opening, closing mouth gestures, and all the meows, of course, go into there. And also howling sounds with different vowels in it can be produced with an opening, closing mouth. I have one example for you here. You've heard the meow at the door. Here are another number of meow sounds.
Kan ni höra eko?
And we have an example of a howl as well. It's an oi, oi, oi. So different kinds of vowels in there. The sound isn't quite good, but I think you can hear it if you listen closely. And this, of course, is a defensive and aggressive kind of sound. And the third category, there are sounds produced with a tense open mouth. It doesn't have to be open quite a lot, but a growl, for instance, doesn't have a closed mouth. A hiss, and also these chatter, chirp-like sounds, which I will play back an example of in a few seconds. But let me start with this one. This is a sequence where you can hear growling, howling, hissing, and even a snarl or a scream. This cat here is Vimsan. She was introduced to my home 2 years ago. I already had 3 resident cats. One of them, Donna, is sitting in this basket, and she's the one doing most of the vocalization in this video. So let me show you. This is where Donna is. Howling. Now it's growling. And there you heard the hiss. And then she goes back into howling again. And the scream, of course, is also a very, very aggressive sound with an open mouth. Now the chattering, chirping sounds are often produced when a cat sees a bird outside the window. And my cats sound something like that, but there's a lot of variation, I think. So when I started recording my own cats and cats in my vicinity, I heard a very large phonetic variations once I used my phonetic ears. And that's what inspired me to begin studying cat sounds in a more systematic way, using my phonetic methods and tools. It's not surprising that cats use sounds when they communicate with us. The cat was domesticated over 10,000 years ago, and we've lived together ever since, and we've learned how to communicate using both visual and vocal signals. And the meow is probably the most common sound directed to us humans, and John Bradshaw, the famous cat expert, describes the meow as an arbitrary attention-seeking sound. And cats need to use sound because we humans, we are so occupied with our eyes elsewhere on our computer screens, televisions, smartphones and so on. So cats need to use sounds to be able to get our attention. I started to record my cats and began looking at the friendly sounds, the meows, the trills, the purrs, and I found very much variation, especially in the melody, in the intonation. And I'll just play you a few examples. This one is a complex sound, starting with a trill or a chirr and then going up into a meow. And you can see that almost the melody rising up to 1000 hertz. It's quite high. I'll play it to you. And this is a trill, much lower in frequency and fairly level fundamental frequency. Not much going on in the melody there. Now, I even looked at these prey-directed sounds, the chirp, chatter, tweet sounds, and found very much variation, so much that I had to sort of get it into some system. So I made a typology or taxonomy of the sounds that I found, and I found very much variation in the melody, in the intonation. As for the aggressive, defensive sounds, agonistic sounds as they're called, the growls, the howls, the hisses, again, I recorded loads of them, found much variation. I'll play you one example here. This is a howling sound going into a growling sound, much lower in frequency, and then up into a howl again. Sounds like this. And you can almost hear the variation in the melody. And this is a pure growl, again, much more level and very, very low frequency. Again, much variation in the intonation, and I even found there seems to be something to do with the distance between the two cats in conflict. If the distance is fairly large, the main sounds that they use are growling, howling, and variations of that. When the distance is reduced a bit, they start to hiss and even spit at each other, the more explosive version of the hiss, the and when they reach body contact, then that's where the screaming and the snarls and the pain shriek starts. I even looked at perception of melody in cat sounds because I found that so interesting, that there was so much variation in there. So me and a colleague at the Humanities Lab, Joost van der Weyer, we recorded different types of meows, 6 I'm going to play to you now. They are recorded in a food-related situation. These cats are sitting in front of their food bowl and they want to be fed breakfast. And I'm going to play them to you all 6 in a very rapid succession, so please pay attention. I don't know if you noticed that there's much variation in the melody, and many of the sounds tend to rise towards the end, and you can almost see that when I've looked at the acoustic parameter pitch here. Now, the second type of meows were vet-related, when cats were sitting in their transport cages in the waiting room waiting to see the vet. And this is what the 6 meows we used in this study sound like. Can you hear the difference in the melody? I hope so, because as you can see here, these meows tend to fall instead, and there's not as much variation in the melody going on here as in the food-related meows. We asked 30 listeners to classify these meows as either food or vet-related, and they were asked to judge each meow 3 times. They were presented in randomized order, and also to give a single judgment of the overall degree of certainty, how certain they were of judging this as food or vet-related. And the results, significantly above chance, experienced listeners were able to judge 70% correct. Those who did not have any experience of cats, a bit lower. And also the experienced listeners were more confident in their responses than inexperienced ones. And we also found a correlation between the variability in pitch and the proportion of their responses. So the lower the pitch varied, the more often this meow was classified as vet-related. And all this research, all our studies led to that we got together a project application, and we got a project grant from Marcus and Amelia Wallenberg Foundation, 5-year project called Melody in Human Cat Communication, Meowsic. And it's Robert Eklund at Linköping University, Joost van der Weyer at Lund University, and myself. And if you're interested, this is our project website. And the purpose, of course, is to study how cats and humans use melody in our communication. The first study, which is ongoing now, is that we want to focus on cat vocalizations. How do cats vary their melody in human-directed and cat-directed vocalizations? And how does it vary in different contexts or situations? And how do we, humans, perceive this variation? And the goal is to develop an international typology of cat vocalizations. And to do that, I mean, putting it into a system again, in which situations are which melodies used and so on. And I'm just going to play a few seconds of a recent pilot data collection. Cats with small video cameras attached to their collars. One video camera filming the whole scene. And this big picture is me holding my cell phone to the cats I'm recording. It's not very easy to get a cat to vocalize on command like you can with a dog. You have to be there at the time. So I'm presenting my cats with the shrimps, which they love, by the way.
Ja. Duktig kille.
And in a while you'll see that we're switching to the cat's camera. You can see his whiskers here, and he's looking at the cat that I'm giving a shrimp now. Now there are a few vocalizations here coming soon. There you go, and one more in a second. There you go. Now, the next study, we focus on human speech, and we want to find out how cats respond to different melodies in human speech. Do they distinguish between different voices? Do they recognize familiar voices? Do they prefer adult voices to children's voices or vice versa? And what speaking styles do they prefer? Do they like that we talk to them like to children? Do they prefer certain intonational patterns or not? Now, how can we use this? Well, on our project website, we will present a guide to different cat sounds, different melodies and cat sounds with descriptions and sound video examples as well. And we hope that our research will contribute to improving human-cat communication and understanding. And I think that there are applications in veterinary medicine, and also more and more cats are being used in therapy. This is, for instance, a picture of a boy training how to read aloud with a cat in his lap. And I think it's more comfortable to have a cat to read to than a human being who might be judging your reading in some way. Cat shelters will of course benefit from this, we hope, and also cat caretakers or owners in general. I think there's a huge interested general public out there wanting to become better communicators with their cats. I would like to say that working at Lund University is a really nice environment. We've received so much feedback from colleagues. I also want to to say thanks to the students, and especially thanks to the Humanities Lab for helping us out with facilities, equipment, service-based expert help, and again, inspiration and discussion. So I'm going to finish off by saying thank you, and I think that this is one way for a cat to say thank you. Thank you.